Part 45. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 441. The devil's voice was like muffled thunder, and after saying that, a pair of huge devil's claws pressed down on Luzaoki like an overwhelming force. Pressing down with a palm, the heaven and earth exerted force together, and the air around him seemed to be squeezing Luzaoki desperately, making him unable to move. This made Luzaoki suddenly rise up, like the monkey in the palm of Tathagata Buddha, who could be crushed under the 5 fingers mountain if someone turned his hand. Fortunately, he was completely different from the monkey head. After all, one is a stick player and the other is a sword player. The next moment, Luzaoki turned into a sword and pierced the devil's palm, flowing light and full of sword intent. A big hole was opened in the devil's palm, and blood all over the sky fell into the flames below, causing the flames to burn even higher. The demon who took action was in pain and cried out "Yaaaaaa!" But Luzaoki unexpectedly took this opportunity to appear in front of him. The sword is gleaming, the waves are surging, and the sword intention is blooming. The devil's eyes gradually became dull, and he made a ho-ho sound from his mouth. The next moment, his huge head suddenly fell into the sea of fire. The other demon was shocked when he saw this. Seeing that Luzaoki was about to take action, he quickly fell to his knees with a plop. "Hero, spare your life." As it spoke, its figure quickly shrank, and in a blink of an eye it was no longer as tall as a mountain, and now only slightly taller than Luzaoki. Luzaoki frowned and looked carefully at the trembling guy lying on the ground in front of him. I saw 2 horns on his forehead, blue eyes and blue hair, 1 tail on his body, his skin turned red and purple, his hands and feet were shackled, and he never broke free no matter how big or small he became. When the demon saw that Luzaoki was silent, he did not dare to raise his already bowed head. He even lowered his body a bit out of fear. Lu killed him with his sword. Luzaoki turned around and looked at the other demon he had killed, only to realize that this guy had completely disappeared in the flames. Only a pair of shackles were left on the ground, and their size returned to normal size. "Who are you?" Luzaoki asked lightly. "As a hero, we are nothing." The devil stammered. "We were originally transformed by the demonic energy that guarded a world, and were later detained in this purgatory. Later he promised us to let us escape from here as long as we can help him guard the gate of hell for 100,000 years. The demonic energy that still guards one realm, is this it?" Luzaoki curled her lips. "With such a high level of prowess, is he so capable of stretching his hips? Stop talking nonsense and tell me how to get out of here." The devil shuddered and said with a grimace, "Spare your life, hero. If we knew how to escape from this purgatory, how could we be trapped here and unable to escape? You know, the pain of burning your body in flames is not very pleasant. Cannot go out? How can it be? This seemingly honest devil actually doesn't tell the truth at all." Luzaoki had long seen through the little hidden thoughts in its heart. Not bothering to talk nonsense with it, after looking around, I finally found a strange device in an inconspicuous corner. There are extremely mysterious spells written on it, but they are hidden in the extremely hot magma. This high temperature of tens of thousands of degrees was nothing to Mr. Lu, who had magic protection. He just moved his fingers slightly to separate the flowing red magma. Appeared in the center of this magic circle. "Hero, don't touch it. That thing can't be touched." The devil looked a little flustered and shouted repeatedly. Then his body was restrained by shackles, unable to stop Luzaoki from getting close to this thing. There was a simple protective cover outside the device, which seemed extremely strong but was shattered by Luzaoki's simple palm. The next moment, Luzaoki reached out and grasped the handle inside, injecting a slight amount of mana. The talisman was activated bit by his power. The next moment, the space broke open, and a huge tearing feeling came. It's a bit similar to the teleportation array Luzioki experienced before. Luzioki seemed to have seen the scene before using her precognition ability, so she did not resist the effect of this power. The next moment, the space distorted, and Luzioki, who was still wrapped in flames, disappeared out of thin air. After he left, the separated magma immediately poured back. Unexpectedly, the device that had been soaked in the magma without any trouble was actually washed away by the hot magma and turned into nothing after losing the protection of the protective cover. He originally thought it was the devil, but now it seems that it is not the case. On this side, Lu, who returned to the stone gate, glanced at the door page strangely. At the same time, he clearly sensed one thing: this place is forbidden to air. The statue depicting the heads of two demons disappeared. That is to say, it is impossible to fly. This prohibition has been engraved into the rules of this place. Even Luzioki, who has become the boss of Yuan Shen, cannot defy the power of this rule. This stone gate seems to be guarded by some unique aura. After sensing that there was no danger, Luzioki stepped forward and pushed open the huge stone door. The corridor-like building inside caught Lu's eyes. Luzioki raised her eyebrows and stepped onto the endless steps. Interesting. Soon, a towering hall appeared in front of Luzioki's eyes. The door of the hall was open, and it was dark inside. It's like a monster opening its mouth wide enough to swallow everything, quietly waiting for its prey to take the bait. Because he felt that these strange stone steps seemed to contain some kind of special power that was slowly draining his life force. The next moment, his color changed slightly. He muttered and continued walking. The broken stone steps are winding and winding, with strange and mysterious patterns and carvings carved on them, ancient and mysterious. As soon as he finished speaking, the demon who had been beheaded by Luzioki slowly walked out of the flames. But it is obvious that this kind of behavior is really a matter of sacrifice. Luzioki has no need to do this unless necessary. The devil, who originally had a pleading and frightened look on his face, was now calm, and even had a hint of a conspiracy successful smile in his eyes. The stone door, which weighed several thousand kilograms, slowly opened on both sides under Luzioki's strength after strengthening it several times. In the vast purgatory, only the strange sighs of two demons echoed. The scorching flames couldn't do anything to him. It was obvious that Luzioki was the prey it was waiting for. Crack, the shackles on his hands and feet were broken every inch. At the same time, an extremely powerful air pressure gently acted on his body. Finally, free. The devil slowly stood up and said calmly, still not coming out. So Luzioki didn't waste any time, taking 3 steps and 2 steps at a time, and quickly climbed up the stone steps. Oh, or maybe by exploding the original power of his mana, he can temporarily break free from the constraints of this rule and gain the ability to fly. The skeleton swordsman below, who was looking forward to Luzioki, didn't dare to take more than half a step, but Luzioki had no intention of continuing to study this problem. Many of the stone pillars in the corridor have been damaged, but this does not affect its vicissitudes and magnificent appearance. This felt like asking Luzioki to climb a mountain with a heavy load. Not far ahead, in the endless darkness, he had already sensed a powerful force. It seemed to be quietly waiting for his arrival. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 442. Luzioki tentatively launched an attack on the building. But the building, protected by mysterious power, remained unwavering in the face of his fierce Jianlan. Then he threw countless swords towards the open hall, but they were swallowed up one by the dark hall without causing any ripples. After such careful testing, Luzioki slowly entered the hall. No wonder he was so wary. Because when he saw this hall, his almost omnipotent destroying illusion Dharma eye actually failed. He didn't get any useful information from this building. This shows that the mysterious power hidden here has already exceeded the limit of what his SSS skills can perceive. What's more, in addition to deception he also has an insight ability that greatly enhances his investigation skills. Equivalent to the combined effect of dual SSS skills, it is still powerless in this hall. Under such circumstances, Luzaoki cannot be too careful. Fortunately, the traps and plots that Luzaoki expected did not appear. He arrived at the center of the hall smoothly. At this time, he suddenly heard the sound of pop and pop. It was like the sound made by metal combat shoes stepping on the stone floor. Peng! 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 The faint ghost-like lamps were suddenly lit, dispersing the rich darkness in the hall. Luzaoki finally had a clear view of the scene in the hall. Open. Magnificent. These two words flashed through Luzaoki's mind at first, but soon his attention was focused on the tall figure walking slowly. That's a huge humanoid monster. He has a humanoid upper body, but his lower body is like a scorpion with 8 legs, 2 pincers, a high raised tail, and a poisonous hook that flashes with cold light. This monster was 5 meters tall, with its entire torso covered by a solid and thick exoskeleton. It also held an extra long dragon gun in its hand and was slowly walking towards Luzaoki with slow steps. The snap sound that Luzaoki just heard was the sound made by his scorpion legs colliding with the ground. Intruder, your soul will rest here forever. Its face was also covered by a ferocious exoskeleton, and its scarlet eyes exuded murderous intent. The only exposed mouth was completely different from that of a human. Its mouth is open vertically. There are several pairs of movable thorns on the left and right sides. When speaking, the left and right mouths are constantly opening and closing, and the hideous and terrifying thorns are constantly swinging back and forth. Seeing this scene, Luzaoki could almost imagine him piercing his long thorns into the prey's body when eating, then tearing off the prey's parts and putting them into his mouth. This anti-human structure couldn't help but give Luzaoki a layer of goosebumps on his back, and he couldn't care less about the monster's yelling words. Just turn it on. Sword comes out without self, open. With the ultimate move, Luzaoki immediately realized something was wrong. Here, his power was suppressed by almost half. Jianlan, who should have been overwhelming, now lost its original scale, and its power was also not as powerful as before. Perhaps, this is the real power of this hall. Seeing Luzaoki attack directly, the scorpion monster was not polite and rushed towards Luzaoki with the dragon gun raised. Ding 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 ding. A dense metallic symphony. Lu's Jianlan, who was originally capable of chopping up time and space, was actually knocked out by the scorpion monster one by one. Fortunately, his dense Jianlan finally had the advantage in numbers. Even though the scorpion monster danced a dragon spear tightly, it was always at a disadvantage. Being pressed down and beaten by Luzaoki. Faced with such an aggrieved situation, the scorpion monster suddenly let out a harsh roar. Then he rotated the dragon gun and struck hard, and the thick gun shaft was bent by it. An extremely fast and arc-shaped spear light slashed towards Luzaoki. Luzaoki faced the attack but did not dodge, and was almost completely overwhelmed by this rapid attack. The next moment, his figure, which was split into pieces by the gun light, turned into stray sword lanterns and regrouped at another location. Luzaoki didn't believe it could maintain such a speed. Because the Jianlan condensed by his sword out of self inherits a series of attributes from the previous blade storm, it is not only capable of growth but will also continue to become stronger as time goes by. It turned out that Luzaoki was already making plans quietly after seeing the speed of the scorpion monster. The most important thing is that he is a monster who doesn't understand Newton's theorem. Not only does he run very fast on the floor, but the ceiling and walls are also on the ground, which does not affect his actions at all. Every attack was easily avoided by the opponent. Facing the fierce attack, the scorpion monster did not resist as before. Instead, it moved its 8-meter-long legs quickly in the hall. Luzaoki commanded Jianlan to pursue the scorpion monster, which was running up, down, left and right, as if it was flashing. He was almost blinded by the opponent. I have to say that this cavalry does move very fast. It obviously has several sharp scorpion legs, but it is not affected at all by the smooth floor and walls. Caught you. Judging from the appearance of this guy, he is obviously a heavy rider, but his agility is far behind that of a light rider. He used Jianlan to chase the scorpion monster so that he could not stop for a moment, but also quietly scattered Jianlan and hid it in every corner of the hall. Although this scorpion monster seemed to be very fast, even surpassing Lu Zhaoqi Jianlan's speed, making it difficult for him to catch it, the long time of running was still very costly. Countless Jianlan emerged from all directions, instantly surrounding the scorpion monster. Thinking of this, Lu Zhaoqi's eyes sharpened and she opened her hands fiercely. Maybe he sensed Lu Zhaoqi's thoughts. But the next moment, a sinister voice sounded behind Lu Zhaoqi. As long as the scorpion monster makes a mistake, what will greet him is a complete strangulation. But Mr. Lu has always been quite good at such brain-burning things. In other words, the longer it is delayed, the better it will be for Lu Zhaoqi. Countless Jianlan quickly penetrated and shattered all the figures transformed by the scorpion monster. It's simply outrageous. The speed of the scorpion monster suddenly increased again. At the same time, he made sword fingers on the back of his left hand and his right hand at the same time. With a slight lift, countless sword lands quickly attacked the scorpion monster as if they were on steroids. This, maybe, is a monster. Anyway, it's just one word, reckless. It's over for being reckless. These phantoms solidified instantly, to the point where they looked real and fake, making it difficult for Lu Zhaoqi to distinguish which one was the real one. I'm too lazy to distinguish between your real and fake bodies, so I just open fire with all my strength and smash them all to pieces. At the same time, his figure suddenly blurred, and several phantoms gradually emerged. But faced with this situation, Mr. Lu didn't panic at all. The next second, Lu Zhaoqi felt a pain in her stomach, as she was pierced by the tail of a huge scorpion. Jianlan under the command of Lu Zhaoqi actually felt like he couldn't catch up with the opponent. As Lu Zhaoqi turned his hands into fists, he shook them hard. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 443. Snapped. Sneak attack. Lu Zhaoqi's eyes widened, and he made a weak ho-ho sound from his mouth, as if he was hit hard by the sudden blow of the tail sting. Wow! A large amount of blood dripped from the wound along the scorpion monster's tail and fell to the ground. The scorpion monster gathered its tail and pulled the immobile Lu Zhaoqi in front of him. The thorns on his mouth twisted, and the scarlet light in his eyes flickered, as if he was sniffing something, and he said intoxicatedly, "Ah, what an intoxicating smell of blood! To commemorate this battle, I will turn you into a part of my body." As he said that, he grabbed Lu Zhaoqi's body, grinning so big that he could almost stuff Lu Zhaoqi down. However, at the next moment, Lu Zhaoqi in his hands suddenly stiffened, and then completely shattered like a mirror image, turning into dots and dissipating. Ah! I didn't expect you to have such a perverted hobby. It's really embarrassing. Lu Zhaoqi's figure reappeared at the other end of the hall, tooting. After all, I haven't tried the feeling of swallowing myself whole, so I can't simulate it. At this moment, he was fully armed and put on his black rose armor. At this moment, he turned on the full armor mode, covering Lu Zhaoqi from beginning to end. The only thing exposed is a pair of eyes that can see the outside world through the helmet. And what was just successfully sneak attacked by the scorpion monster was just an illusion created by someone named Lu. Through the looking glass. The ability developed by Lu Zhaoqi himself. The blood glow in the scorpion monster's eyes shrank sharply, but the next moment, before he could move, countless sword lanterns shuttled through its body. His huge body immediately fell to the ground. Luzioki's attacks, which he had been aiming for a long time, were naturally extremely precise. Each sword strike hit the most vulnerable joints of the scorpion monster's body, easily dismembering his body. Even so, it did not die. It was still struggling on the ground, trying to get up again. It is worth mentioning that Luzioki always thought that its body protected by an extremely strong exoskeleton should be a physical body, so the liquid that flows out after being injured should be a liquid similar to blood. But what surprised him was that faint black smoke continued to leak out from the wounds of the monster's amputated limbs, but no blood seeped out. It seems that the nature of this monster is still the same as those skeleton swordsmen outside, they are all undead. At this moment, the upper body and lower body of the scorpion monster had been completely separated. The 8 scorpion legs and the tail with the stinger were disassembled into pieces of material by Luzioki and put into the package. Only the amputated hands were left. Only the head and torso of the scorpion monster were left, still twisting and twisting on the ground. Luzioki stepped forward, stepped on the monster's huge head with his combat shoes, stretched out a sharp sword in his hand, and clamped it on the scorpion monster's neck. About Mr. Scorpion's pica. He smiled and said, "Maybe we should have a good chat, what do you think?" According to Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva's original Vow Sutra, people like this will fall into the endless hell for thousands of billions of kalpas, and they will continue to seek their escape indefinitely. Buddha said, there are 3 kinds of timelessness, spacelessness, and receiver. Those who commit the 5 treasons will fall into this realm forever and suffer the ultimate infinity. As word is nothing, and Nos's word is interval. It is timeless, spaceless, and a realm of receiving immeasurable karma and retribution. Therefore, Avasai Hell is also called the Infinite Hell. The place Luzioki is currently in is this endless hell. Living in such hell, you will not feel the passage of time and space, or time and space will never end, and the various tortures you will suffer will never end. Even if you die, you will be forcibly dragged by the endless hell. Come back and continue the torture. It turns out that those skeleton swordsmen will not die because they are strange, but because they are in this endless hell, and death itself is a luxury. As Luzioki is the only living creature in this endless hell, any dead person here will be unable to suppress their inner thoughts to devour and replace him. Until Luzioki was turned into an undead like them, and he was able to transcend the life he had plundered. As a living being, Luzioki's way to leave this place is also very simple. That is the infernal road through customs. So, after all is said and done, we still have to fight all the way through. Lu muttered something, and trampled the scorpion monster to death with a kick. After a period of torture to extract a confession from Luzioki, this guy was completely ruined and was simply killed. Of course, Luzioki knew that this was only temporary. It won't be long before it will be pulled back from death by this endless hell. I just don't know how it can continue to guard this palace after losing its limbs and weapons. So I told you not to use guns. Lucky for lancers since ancient times. You don't even understand this truth, no wonder you fell into this endless hell. Luzioki carried the monster's huge dragon gun and swaggered toward the next level with a swagger in her mouth. But he didn't go far before he was stuck by the narrow door. The dragon spear is too long and too big, and there are twists and turns behind the door, making it impossible to squeeze through. You're so old, can't you bear it for a while? Luzioki fiddled with the newly acquired weapon for a while, but after seeing that there was really no way to take it out, she shook her head and said helplessly, "Eat it, Black Rose." Hearing this, the armor on Luzioki's body obviously became excited, and the surface surged like a liquid, completely covering the dragon spear in Luzioki's hand in the blink of an eye. The next moment, Luzioki made a light move in her hand, and Black Rose had already swallowed the dragon spear and retracted it. The attributes have been slightly improved, but the extra spell-breaking attribute is quite interesting. It can break the opponent's rule power to a certain extent. Without the obstructing weapon, Luzaoki successfully passed through the twists and turns and narrow passages and appeared in the next level. This time, what appeared in front of Luzaoki was a dead and silent wasteland. There are gray-black scorched rocks everywhere. Guarding this place is an abomination. Yes, you heard it right. Hate. It's that huge, disgusting monster that is made up of countless corpses and can grow by devouring living creatures and even corpses. It is often shown as holding a knife in one hand and a hook with a chain in the other hand. The abdomen is broken open to expose the internal organs. But don't think that this is its weakness. In fact, all creatures that fall into its belly, without exception, become part of his body. Even in the process of continuous devouring, his body will become more and more bloated, and even appear with multiple heads and arms. The monster Luzaoki will face next is this kind of thing. So you know you can't beat me, so you plan to disgust me to death, right? Luzaoki muttered dissatisfiedly and quickly moved forward. After obtaining the information in the scorpion spirit's mind, he who originally knew nothing about this place was equivalent to obtaining first-hand strategy information, and naturally he felt a little relaxed. The next moment, a huge meat mountain appeared in front of him. This mountain of meat is taller than the previous scorpion spirit. It is a huge monster made of countless corpses twisted together. Under this meat mountain, there is a thick layer of broken corpses. At this moment, Abomination is concentrating on looking for the body parts he likes. When he sees the place he is satisfied with, he will cut it with the big knife in his hand. Cut it off and put it into the big mouth-like gap in your abdomen. As the disgusting organs continue to squirm, the cut-off body parts will appear on a certain part of the body that you hate. Bloated, horrible, and disgusting. This is Luzaoki's first impression of it. Naturally, there is nothing more to say. Monster, look at the sword. Sorry, I forgot to set the timer yesterday, so I posted it a little late. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 444. Is the hatred strong? To be honest, that's pretty awesome. That fat and bloated body gave him unparalleled defense and damage reduction. Each of Luzaoki's sword lanterns could only cut off a small part of the stump and broken arm from its body, causing negligible damage. And it can also recover from its injuries by continuously devouring corpses, which means that it is almost impossible to defeat before the almost endless pile of corpses under it is cleaned up. Abomination's attacks are equally deadly. The huge body gives it extremely powerful strength. The big knife in its hand can easily break through anything, and the hook with the long chain once captures the prey. Then the only outcome waiting for him is to turn into a part of hatred. However, for Luzaoki, the pressure this monster brought to him was minimal. Because, in his eyes, this is just a slow-moving target. Apart from being beaten, he can't survive any trouble. Luzaoki's evaluation is, not as good as the scorpion monster. The damage of a sword lan is indeed like a needle prick, but if Luzaoki doesn't take action, it will hit tens of thousands of sword lan. It can be said that 10,000 swords are fired at once. Which monster dares to challenge Mr. Lu's authority head-on? What? You said it can eat corpses and restore damage? Haha, do you think Lu's new skills were learned in vain? Forbidden Curse Elemental Explosion. Clear the screen directly. No explanation. The only thing that makes Luzaoki depressed is that the corpses that make up Abomination seem to be calculated independently. Luzaoki used Finger of Death to point at it countless times. Every time he successfully triggered the instant kill effect, only a corpse turned into rotten flesh was peeled off from the roaring Abomination. It didn't have the final word effect that Luzaoki originally imagined. Hey, it feels so bad to see Boyu write so awesomely on the skill panel, but he ended up being deceived. But no matter what, the smelly hatred soon let out a miserable howl and fell to the ground in front of Luzaoki. The originally huge body had become skinny and had been cut into pieces by Luzaoki countless times. Soon, its remaining body was turned into carrion under the influence of Luzaoki's skills. This monster that had existed for an unknown length of time seemed to have completely disappeared from the world. However, Luzaoki knew that soon, it would be born again from a certain corpse, then slaughter other undead souls wantonly, devour the corpses, and gradually return to the appearance Luzaoki had seen before. But all this has nothing to do with Luzaoki. Because after Luzaoki dealt with this guy, he successfully obtained the key to the next level. The broken bloody sword. After inserting it into the only clean wall in the domain of abomination, the sound of booming was heard endlessly. A brand new tunnel appeared in front of Luzaoki. Next, the monster Luzaoki is about to deal with is the even weirder and more powerful soul holder. Regarding this monster, the scorpion monster gave Luzaoki very little information. The only thing I know is that the souls of the dead who have seen this guy are imprisoned in him and enslaved. Fortunately, this guy seemed to have a strong obsession with his own domain and would hardly step out of his own sphere of influence. This allowed the other dead who guarded infernal affairs to survive. Even just mentioning it, the scorpion monster who was beaten unconscious could not help but show fear and tremble. But Luzaoki just didn't believe in this evil. Including my passive and life-saving methods, I have hundreds of lives. Can you still beat me to death? Can you beat me with 17 cards? So, he boldly stepped into the tunnel. After passing through the long tunnel, what appeared in front of Luzaoki was a strange dense forest. The trees here grew crookedly, and at a glance, each one looked like a dead soul that was imprisoned in place, unable to move, and could only twist and wail silently. But if you look closely, you will see that they are just dry and rotten trees. Eerie and terrifying. This is the sound produced when the chain is dragged on the ground and collides with the uneven ground. Luzaoki should not have been able to see the writing of the deceased, but some unique spell seemed to have been cast on it. Even the living could clearly understand its meaning. It turns out that this is the true meaning of Silent Hill. Soul-snatching messenger, this was Luzaoki's first reaction. The shape of the guide sign is like a withered ghost claw, pointing crookedly at the trail ahead, with mysterious writing on it saying, Silent Hill in 3 big words. Whoosh. 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 Soon, a figure vaguely appeared in the fog. Luzaoki became so angry that he simply flicked his fingers and shot out several sword lanterns, directly smashing the nearby dead wood into pieces. But soon, something happened to him. Luzaoki frowned and could only speed up and continue moving forward. The fog is getting thicker and thicker, and the surroundings are quiet, which indeed makes people feel panicked. Scared me. Inside, no one could make a sound. This sound that should have been very weak became so obvious in this completely silent space. A chill ran down Luzaoki's spine, and she quickly spat out the association and stopped the behavior of scaring herself. But as the figure continued to get closer and became clearer, Luzaoki's expression gradually changed from serious at the beginning to shock and astonishment. And the sound gradually became louder, as if something was slowly approaching. And as Luzaoki went deeper and deeper, the surroundings gradually began to fill with fog that even Luzaoki's deception eye could not penetrate. He believed that as long as he seizes the time to kill the soul-binding envoy guarding the level, all these strange phenomena will naturally be solved. It's called Silent Hill. Even Luzaoki couldn't help but feel her heart skip a beat, and she summoned her weapons and stood ready. A huge skull was placed diagonally on the road sign, with faint will-o'-the-wisps coming out of the dark eye sockets. There is a signpost not far away. Luzaoki opened her mouth and planned to say something to cheer herself up. Even Luzaoki, who has always been bold, couldn't help but shudder at this moment. It refers to a strange place of absolute silence. Continuing to move forward, the road becomes winding and winding, diagonally heading upwards. Because everyone who makes a sound is. It seems like we are really walking on a dangerous mountain ridge. Yes, in this realm, the only one who seems to be able to move freely is this gatekeeper who is feared by the other dead. A place without sound. As soon as I opened my mouth, I was surprised to find that no sound came out of my mouth. Because he heard the sound. Fuck. Thresh. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 445. I saw the green soul flame burning on the head of the visitor. He was wearing a worn, dark, and loose robe. In one hand he was holding a lantern with the same soul flame as his body, and in the other hand he was holding a sickle hook. The tail is connected to a long chain. The sound Luzaoki just heard was the sound of the chain being dragged on the ground. Not only is this image somewhat similar to Thresh, it can only be said to be exactly the same. Its skull-like head twisted slightly, its green eyes stared straight at the strangers who had trespassed into its territory, and it opened and closed its upper and lower jaws to let out an enchanting laugh. Quack. There is actually a stranger breaking into this place. Your soul is about to be mine. It spoke in a low and gloomy tone, and as it spoke, the soul lamp it held in its hand began to flame. Luzaoki could vaguely see countless wailing souls imprisoned in it. Good guy, no matter what the relationship between this guy and Thresh is, the only thing that is certain is that it is as perverted as Thresh. Luzaoki also curled her lips in dissatisfaction and muttered silently, "This is not fair. Why is Silent Hill closed to me alone? What? Is it the homeowner? The landlord is amazing. Can the landlord do whatever he wants?" But before he could finish his rant, the roaring sickle hook interrupted his self-amusement. This soul-binding messenger launched an attack on him without hesitation. Luzaoki dodged to avoid the sickle hook, but as the soul holder shook the chain in his hand slightly, the sickle hook that had passed Luzaoki immediately changed its direction and attacked him again. Snort. If there is a road to heaven, don't take it. If there is no door to hell, you can throw yourself into it. Luzaoki immediately snorted coldly. Countless Jianlan, armed with the sacred attribute of defeating the undead, overwhelmingly faced the attack of the soul-restraining messenger. Just hit its sickle hook and send it flying back. Huh, the soul seducer gathered up the chain and caught the sickle hook, his eyes flashing with will-o'-the-wisps, and said, "The stranger who can reach this place really has two brushes. Looks like I'm going to show off some real skills." As he spoke, he put away the sickle hook, patted the lantern he was carrying with his hands like ghost claws, and chuckled, "Come out to work, my slave." The next moment he took off the cover covering the lantern. In an instant, the color of the world changes. The soul-seducing messenger's eyes flashed with will-o'-the-wisps, and it said with a ferocious smile, "Storm of dead souls." The original thick fog around was suddenly blown away by the sudden green wind. In the green wind, countless ferocious faces appeared vaguely. They bared their teeth and claws and rushed towards Luzaoki. It happened to collide with the Jianlan launched by Luzaoki. There was a constant sound like bubbles being blown instantly. These souls enslaved by the seducer will perish themselves like moths flying into a flame when they bump into Luzaoki's Jianlan. But Luzaoki's expression suddenly changed. Although Jianlan had no actual losses after killing these dead souls, the originally bright golden light had become dim, and even the edges of many Jianlan were quietly dyed green. These ghosts can actually corrode Luzaoki's Jianlan. You must know that with the blessing of Lu's sword intention, the power of these Jianlan has already broken through the sky. When ordinary things encounter this Jianlan, they will just end up being split into two. Even time and space can be cut apart by it. You can see how sharp it is. Unexpectedly, this weird thing not only could not be restrained by Jianlan who had the divine attribute, but could actually contaminate Luzaoki's skills. Who knows what will happen if Jianlan is completely infected? Lu Xiaoqi didn't want to experience it, so he decisively drove away Jianlan, who showed signs of pollution. After several waves of fighting, the Soul Seducer's soul storm consumes a lot of energy, but the ghosts flying out of its lantern seem to be endless. Lu Xiaoqi seemed to have no losses, but his expression was surprisingly ugly. Because his sword power does not increase but decreases. You must know that as a growth skill, the power of sword out of self is closely related to the sword intent value. It can be said that as long as the sword intent value is enough, even a god can kill you. At the same time, the characteristics of this skill also grow by killing monsters and increasing the sword intent value. At this time, Lu Xiaoqi threw out several sword out of selflessness. Not only did the upper limit of the sword intention value not increase, but it was also reduced by the opponent's moves. This is a fatal blow. This means that if Lu Xiaoqi wants to preserve the power of this skill, he can no longer use the skill in the battle with the Soul Enchanter. But then, Lu Xiaoqi's expression changed and she smiled. Perhaps for others, having their main attack skill sealed is basically equivalent to playing GG. Because an ordinary adventurer only has 9 skill slots, every skill he carries is crucial. But who is Lu Xiaoqi? There are countless skill columns for people. The reason why he likes to use the skill to start with is because so far, this skill is the only skill he has with growth attributes, so. Because he is handsome. The long sleeves fluttered, and with a wave of his hand, thousands of swords came out, and the colorful glass. How touching. In fact, if you look at Lu Xiaoqi's current skill list, the skill sword out of self is really not that outstanding. In terms of damage and AoE, the ultimate destructive power of Forbidden Spell Elemental Explosion almost completely destroyed Jianlan. In terms of efficiency and point kills, Death Finger is unrivaled. For others, the uncertainty of the instant kill mechanism of Finger of Death cannot be used as a conventional method against the enemy. At best, it can be used as a limiting skill to weaken the opponent. But who is Lu Xiaoqi? People don't have CDs. If one does not trigger the instant kill, I will release 10 of them. If 10 are not released, then I will release 100. As long as I have enough mana, I can point Finger of Death to make your mother explode. So when facing the soul-restraining messenger who kept laughing strangely, Lu Xiaoqi pointed her middle finger at it with her backhand, symbolizing civilization and politeness, and mouthed, "Fu, civilization, CKU. Finger of Death, activate." The body of the soul holder suddenly froze, and the flames in his eyes withered. Even the dead soul storm launched by the soul holder was affected and scattered a lot. Huh? Not triggered? Lu Xiaoqi was a little surprised. With the characteristic of the Finger of Death, Hand of Hell, he has a high probability of being hit, but there is still no problem if he hits 8 or 9 out of 10 shots. But he didn't want to fail with his first shot at the soul-binding messenger. But it doesn't matter, the quality is not enough, just make up for the quantity. Lu Xiaoqi used both her left and right hands without hesitation, with her middle finger and death finger constantly moving. Finally, the soul-snatching messenger wailed, and it seemed that the decision was successful. But the next moment, a twisted ghost flew out of the lantern it was holding, and Lu Xiaoqi's face was wailing and burned by the soul flames. But the soul-binding messenger has nothing to do with it. Lu Xiaoqi's face was as sinking as water. Good guy. This girl has a scapegoat. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 446. However, death penalty can be avoided, but living crime cannot be avoided. Although the soul-binding envoy did not fall to Lu Xiaoqi's Finger of Death, the aura exuded from his body fell to the bottom, and his strength was obviously greatly damaged. The most obvious evidence is that it can no longer control the storm of dead souls he summoned. Many evil ghosts escaped from the lanterns. Instead of blending into the storm, they ferociously rushed towards the caster, the soul holder. However, a skinny camel is bigger than a horse. For these small characters, soul holder still has two brushes. It just ignited green soul flames on its body, and then ignited the evil ghosts that came back to bite it, turning them into ashes in the endless wails. However, Luzioki was not idle during this period. He squinted his eyes slightly, but put on a classic pose of facing waves. I saw him standing in a horse stance, with his hands gathered around his waist in a lotus shape. Turtle, pi, chi, gong. Cross out. It's actually a charged version of forbidden spell elemental explosion. The next moment, the endless power of the four elements was condensed into a shockwave of destruction, turning into a waterfall and rushing towards the soul holder. Faced with such a level of attack, the soul holder was obviously a little surprised. Isn't this man a swordsman? How come they started to fight against each other after everything was fine? It hurriedly summoned the dead souls to form a protective shield in front of itself, but it didn't expect that the power of chaotic elements that could destroy everything would break through its defense like a bamboo. The next moment, the incomparably powerful energy completely overwhelmed the soul holder. The fog cleared. Since ancient times, you have lost to the left side of the wave. You don't even understand this. Why are you fighting with me? Luzioki regained his voice, and he mentioned with disdain the soul-binding messenger that had turned into a pile of withered bones. Then he said a somewhat surprised "Huh? This guy actually ran away." He didn't sense the death aura that completely annihilated the soul holder, but he knew that this guy actually abandoned his body at the most critical moment, leaving only a trace of his soul and escaping. Luzioki shook her head slightly. Forget it, it doesn't matter anymore. Anyway, my goal is to clear the level, not to kill everyone. The main reason is that this ghost has endless tricks, and Luzioki is a little numb, too lazy to deal with it. He picked up the lantern dropped by the soul holder. This thing seems to be used to imprison and torture the dead souls it arrests. But it also has another effect. That is the introduction. Use it to light the way forward to the next level. To be honest, each of these ghost things is more perverted than the last. Without the information obtained from the scorpion monster, who would have thought that this lantern is the key? Of course, given Luzioki's character, even if he didn't get any strategies from monsters and couldn't find a way out, he would just capture a certain soul-snatching messenger and kill it over and over again until it told him how to get out. Luzioki poured mana into the lantern. The lantern began to emit a faint green light, and a completely different road slowly appeared in front of Luzioki, leading directly to the clouds like a ladder to heaven. Luzioki walked up without hesitation. Soon he entered the next level. At this time, in the depths of the mist, two tall demons were slowly staring at a trembling, weak soul. Soul-holding messenger, one of the demons smiled disdainfully. Your natal soul box is in my hands. If you don't want to be completely annihilated, just hand over what I want. The scene at the next level was far beyond Luzioki's imagination. Because after he walked out of the passage that looked like a ladder to heaven, he stepped into the endless swamp. The mud in this swamp is full of the power of death, and it also carries a very difficult adsorption force, which seems to pull everything that steps into the swamp to the bottom. Not only are they vicious, but each head has a special ability. A hydra with crickets alone can't do anything to him. Bridges and sacks. This is Luzioki's direct feelings about this level. You might not believe it if you tell me. This guy is indeed not easy to mess with. After eating so many divine fragments for so long, the converted power of the divine god was in short supply. After all, before Luzioki, it was said that the undead souls who had seen the soul-bringing messenger himself were detained and enslaved by him, that is, locked in lanterns. There is also a hydra in Luzioki's pure land of paradise. If Luzioki is willing to spend a huge amount of money to upgrade it to 3 stars, sunshine level, he will probably have good strength. Why do you say this way? Every other day, Luzioki's Pure Land of Paradise undergoes earth-shaking changes, both in terms of the number and level of buildings. But you do have relatives on my hands, bah. Stinky, evil, dirty. Luzioki raised her hand, ignoring her slowly sinking body, and looked up at the huge creature in front of her with a serious look. Water control, earth control, paralysis, soul, immortality. But what made him even more dizzy was that as soon as he came in, there were 18 bloodthirsty and cruel eyes staring at him. Various means emerge in endlessly. But compared to the astonishing power exuded by the one he saw so far, the subordinate he kept in captivity pales in comparison. That's it too. Not only did he have the home court advantage, he was also waiting for work, almost catching Luzioki off guard. Hydra, or Xiang Lu, was looking at Luzioki with a lustful look. After finally waiting for the development of Pure Land to stabilize a bit, he had a little surplus on hand. In the blink of an eye, Luzioki spent all of it on his sister, Lu Wanyi, to advance to the sun. But Luzioki is Luzioki after all. I mean, they are all our own family members, so why bother killing them? After all, the scorpion monster has never seen a higher level gatekeeper monster. Therefore, the Hydra that appeared in front of Luzioki also dismissed what he said. After it let out a low neigh, it opened its 9 bloody mouths and launched a fierce attack on someone on the ground. So, the next moment, a huge toad with abscesses all over its body and a hairy monkey that looked like a water ghost emerged silently from the smelly swamp. Of course, this is also related to the fact that they haven't risen to the stars yet. But it's not Luzioki who is so fussy about doing things, it's just that the cute foodie's little belly is not strong enough. The bulk of the power consumed by the godhead is actually the construction of the Pure Land of Paradise. It was even said that he didn't know how he obtained the information about the soul-holding envoy. Because Luzioki's strategy ends at soul holder. Naturally, Hydra, a small character who appeared in less than 3 chapters, is out of the question. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 447. Hydra. Poisonous Devil Toad. Demonize Zuyan. A strange light flashed in Luzioki's eyes, and he had gained insight into the information about the 3 monsters. Needless to say, the Hydra is a tyrant in the swamp. Apart from being extremely poisonous, its attack methods are almost the same as those of a certain Tam. To Luzioki, there is no threat. As among the 3 mythical creatures, Zuyan originated from his family's mythology, and Luzioki's focus was obviously much higher. The legendary Zuyan looks like a white ape, and the world will be in chaos. But Zuyan, who appeared in front of Luzioki at this moment, had blurry eyes and a strong demonic aura rising all over his body. He didn't know whether it was because of the influence of the demonized affix or because the swamp was too dirty. Zuyan's original white hair turned into gray-black, with purple-black stains scattered on it, but if you look closely, it looks like some kind of weird lines. Luzioki's heart moved and she had some guesses. He easily dodged the combined attacks of the 3 monsters, and both sides stood still and faced each other. 3 behemoths stood in front of Luzioki. They exuded a terrifying, dark, and evil power, making them tremble with fear. This was not enough. After the monkey-like Zuyan let out a shocking roar, the swampland actually started to bubble with gurgling sounds. The next moment, countless monsters emerged from the sewage. Good guy. So baby. This big boss is actually impressive. It's not enough to defeat one of the 3 bosses, he also asked his subordinates to come out to help. Are you embarrassed? Do you want to be shameless? But Luzioki looked at its violent and chaotic eyes and guessed that it wouldn't think about these issues at all. Almost instantly, Luzioki was surrounded by thousands of monsters. There were even some uncontrollable monsters that were lurking in the swamp under Luzioki, preparing to deliver a 1,000-year kill blow to Luzioki. And this skill is awesome. Just hold it in your mouth. Once someone makes this gesture, regardless of whether they are successfully released or whether they hit the target, it will cause huge pressure and invisible deterrence to the other party. Especially when multiple people use this trick to target the same target at the same time. Can't help it? There's no way to prevent it? Even when Kobe comes, he has to show that he can't defend him at all. But faced with this situation, is Luzioki afraid? What a joke. People are stupid. Even if the enemy is outnumbered and we are outnumbered, someone like Lu can still seize the virginity of an enemy general in the midst of thousands of troops, but it's the first level. Therefore, his whole body violently burst out with majestic momentum. This coercion can almost suppress the soldiers summoned by the opponent and prevent them from moving. Then, Luzioki slowly made a leaning motion. Without hesitation, turn around and run. Joke. Although the opponent is at home, it is not impossible to play. Although the opponent was numerous, Luzioki was not afraid. The opponent's little trick has not yet been discovered, and it will have little impact on Lu, who has been influenced by the word reckless throughout his life. But, if it's important, I have to drink water 3 times. If these 3 factors are added together, even if Lu is always stubborn and does not look back when he hits the south wall and wants to break the wall, he should use his little brains appropriately. Ah, it's so itchy, I'm going to grow a brain. Such an unfair battle, whoever Te Miao fights with you will be punished. The aura of these 3 monsters is not much weaker than Wang Yanran, who is known as the number 1 in the Sun 3 boss, rounded up, that is a dozen Wang Yanran. In addition, we are fighting on the road, and the opponent is waiting for work. Our army is outnumbered and outnumbered. Luzioki decided to use the secret skill left by his ancestors first, run away. After all, speaking of it, Luzioki has gone through many battles along the way, and she hasn't made any modifications yet. This physical strength and mana recovered very quickly, and Luzioki had never worried about this problem. However, when the human nerves are in a highly tense state, the energy consumption is still exaggerated. Even Luzioki felt a little uncomfortable after killing so many monsters in succession. After all, few of the enemies who appeared in front of him were simple things. You can more or less perform a few moves in someone Lu's hands. Therefore, Luzioki plans to use a little more tactics this time. Why is it called tactics? Because, as Luzioki broke out with astonishing escape speed, the 3 bosses were all startled. They looked at Lu's almost straight and rampant escape route and couldn't help but look blank. What are you doing? Don't you know this area only has such a large area? So what if you escape to the farthest distance? Doesn't it have to be blocked by the barrier of nothingness? However, the demonized Zuyan, whose mind was full of killing, was the first to react. It roared angrily, used its hands and feet, ignored the obstacles of the terrain, and quickly passed through the swamp and chased Luzioki. Also like Luzioki, he chose the shortest straight-line pursuit method. But the only difference is that his body is probably as big as 20 or 30 people like Lu. Therefore, the damage caused is also quite astonishing. Any small soldiers that stand in front of it will be brutally crushed by it, without any regard to the fact that these guys are all summoned by it with hard work. The second fastest is the poisonous devil toad. This guy also jumps, and can even dive. The webbed feet on his 4 feet are quite powerful for terrain like swamps. As for being a snake, although Hydra's speed cannot be said to be slow, it pales in comparison to the previous 2. And this guy is obviously much more cunning than the previous 2 monsters. After all, he has 9 heads. In total, isn't that 8 times more powerful than an ordinary monster? Therefore, It did not exert its full strength at all, but secretly made its own little calculations while wondering what the trick of this rice-sized creature was. Brother Zuyan is really fierce. He obviously cannot be offended. But this smelly toad has been greedy for a long time. If only I could find a chance. Isn't that venom-filled pustule much more delicious than that sesame-sized gadget? Hiss. Knowing that there was a dead end ahead, Hydra naturally walked slowly and at the end. So, not long after, the three boss-level monsters were pulled apart by Luzaoki one by one. And that group of miscellaneous fish soldiers. He was so dumped by Luzaoki that he couldn't even see his shadow. Really, someone from Lu is using tactics. You can't stop the gods. Luzaoki naturally didn't run around without covering her head. After all, with the Hunyuan Wujiyi wind form activated, he could throw away three monsters in an instant and even the tail lights of the car could not be seen. Let them see what it means to be truly far ahead. Of course he definitely didn't do that. In fact, Luzaoki had been paying attention to the movements behind him. For no other reason than to divide the battlefield. Defeat the enemy's encirclement. By the way, let's verify his inner conjecture. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 448. Soon, Luzaoki stopped. Because an endless wall of chaos appeared in front of him. Through the destroying illusion Dharma eyes, Luzaoki clearly saw the power of rules full of weirdness, chaos, and terror. Obviously, those who rush in must not have any good juice to eat. Although Luzaoki is reckless, he is not stupid. On the contrary, in most cases, he is very witty. So he stopped decisively, quietly closing his eyes and waiting for the arrival of the first monster, demonized Zuyan. As a monster of the monkey genus, Zuyan's speed did not disappoint Luzaoki. Almost less than 20 seconds after Luzaoki stopped moving, this ugly monkey appeared in front of Luzaoki with its unique roar. And this guy seems to be really not very smart. It saw Luzaoki standing in front of the void barrier, but it had no intention of stopping. It directly used its big feet, which were at least size 1086, to greet Luzaoki's white and delicate face. Knock on Grandma Li. This guy is definitely jealous that I am more handsome than him. Luzaoki was indignant. Sometimes, shouldn't we look for more reasons for ourselves? After so many years, have you changed your style? Have you seriously shaped up? Although he was complaining, his movements were not slow at all, and he grabbed the huge toe that Zuyan kicked with his backhand. The next moment, Infinite Hell Bliss Fall, open. The new SS Add 1, skill, which inherits the attributes and effects of the previous Lan Ji Shan, can take Luzaoki's package weight into account when determining and causing damage. And Luzaoki's parcel column, which can be called an infinite treasure bag, is carrying a heavy load. All I can say is DDDD. Coupled with the terrifying blessings of a series of passive abilities and the exaggerated improvement of grabbing skills by the form of Hunyuan Wujiyi. All I can say is that everyone who has used it says it's good. The person being used. Just look at this behemoth. Almost at the moment of contact, the exaggerated potential energy brought by the extreme speed of demonized Zuyan was completely stopped by Luzaoki with one hand. It seems that what is standing in front of this demon ape is not a thin human being, but Mount Buzhu that runs through the heaven and earth and supports the world. It's a pity that although Zuyan is strong, he doesn't have the strength of Gong Gong, nor is he as stubborn as anyone else. So its attack was taken lightly by Luzaoki. Of course, this is no surprise. Because Luzaoki also applied another skill, Killing Intent Countermeasure. Attributes are not obvious if you don't know, go back and read chapter 429. After all this time, he finally mastered the trick and merged the two skills into one move. It combines the ultimate explosive output of Infinity Hell Bliss Fall with the absolute defense of Killing Intent countermeasure. So this shocking scene was staged in the swamp. The huge violent demon ape was effortlessly blocked and lifted up by a human being who was 30 times smaller than it. What does this amount to? It was equivalent to the arrival of a monster. Before Daegyo could turn into light, he rushed forward and forcibly picked up a monster as tall as Ultraman and threw him over his shoulder with his backhand. Shocked the boss circle for 100 years. Of course, Luzaoki used both of his moves, so he wouldn't call it a day so easily. In fact, the moment he lifted demonized Zuyan up, thunderous energy penetrated the monster's body, making him completely unable to move and completely losing his ability to resist. It is clear. With the huge weight difference and the blessing of many abilities, the judgment was undoubtedly successful. So Luzaoki grinned and without hesitation raised Zuyan's stinky feet and started performing Hulk Throw Unlimited Repeat Plus version. If you are not sure, please search King of Fighters, Infinite Dark Hell Bliss Fall and Hulk Fall on Site B. Boom. Boom. Boom, X99 plus. A bunch of smashing. Facing Hulk's blow, even Loki and Hammer God Thor, who have the blood of frost giants, were beaten to the point of doubting their lives. And Zuyan, who exists as a monster, is no exception. Although the swampy terrain reduced a lot of damage to it, it was still no match for Luzaoki's skill multiplier, which was astonishing. Moreover, this move has all the effects of the two skills, as well as the blessing of many abilities. Luzaoki dared to say that even if the person in front of him at this moment was the creator Jesus, then he dares to just go up and make a sliding shovel. Die decently and with dignity. Ahem, let's get down to business. Zuyan was naturally stunned. Even though it has rough skin and thick flesh, and is blessed by the boss template, its various abilities are almost supermodel. But under all this chaos, he almost couldn't catch his breath and went straight to the sky to see his wife. Less than a minute passed. Do you understand what the true spirit is? Not ignorant? Crush them. The enemy has 30 seconds to arrive at the scene. Directly remove the target's negative status. Of course, he did not have such a background to make Zuyan, whose mind had been eroded by demonic energy, listen to his words, nor did he have the eloquence to speak so eloquently that he could directly understand what it means to put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha immediately. So better, just bounce back. Of course, the injuries suffered have not been reduced much. At most, they are no longer getting worse. Even the originally dirty demonized Zu, oh, no, he should be called Zuyan now. Curse reflection, during the duration of the skill, the target receiving the buff will reflect the curse he received on the person who cast the curse. This means that the person who has been buffed by the effect of this skill, let alone being invaded by external evil spirits and losing his will, even if his soul is gone and only his true spirit is left, it can forcefully protect you until the skill ends and prevent you from falling. Lose yourself in reincarnation. And if you have a curse on you, Lu wants to try it too. SS add 1, skill. Our ancestors had a plan called, turn enemies into friends. He raised his hand to release the healing skill star prayer and said casually, it's too late to explain, big monkey, get in the car quickly. The separated bosses have already lost a big brother. Do you know what curse rebound is? Almost immediately, the big boss began to curl up with the weird and evil lines on his body. Luzaoki has never tested the effect of this skill. But Luzaoki had no time to chat with it. The most important thing is that it has two awesome characteristics. True Spirit imbued, during the duration of the skill, the target that gains the buff will be True Spirit immortal and will not fall into disorder. So without saying anything, Luzaoki raised her hand and cast a ray of light over demonized Zuyan. What's going on? The big guy looked confused and hadn't figured out what was going on. Almost instantly, Lu Xiaoqi was completely driven away from Zuyan's body. Because he plans to play big ticket. Its eyes suddenly became clear, and even its hair became white and clean. Prayer of Wuchen. But people have skills. That is. When Lu Xiaoqi lost interest and dropped the unconscious and almost comatose monkey. But Lu Xiaoqi did not directly take the life of demonized Zuyan. The ready-made test product is here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 449. Maybe Lu is indeed very friendly, or maybe Zuyan, who has recovered, has already felt the aura of Lu Xiaoqi's skills in his body, or maybe it's because he still vaguely retains a previous demonized memory fragments. So it believed what Lu said without hesitation, bared its sharp fangs at the poisonous devil toad that jumped over, and roared loudly. Lu Xiaoqi covered her ears. This gorilla is good at everything but likes to yell. Well, fortunately, he doesn't have the habit of banging his pussy, which is worthy of praise. However, Lu Xiaoqi was very pleased to see this guy swinging his arms and going straight towards the confused toad. It is estimated that even this poisonous devil toad himself cannot figure it out clearly. Isn't this big brother with him? Why did he suddenly rebel in such a short period of time? It's a pity that it will never get the answer. Because Zuyan was fearless of poisonous attributes, Lu's evolutionary skills were ongoing and immune to abnormal conditions, he directly pinned him down in the swamp and beat him violently. I beat it until it rolled all over the floor and burst into pulp everywhere. The Hydra, which was slowly coming over, was also stunned. What's going on? Internal strife? Sure enough, this big boss who only thinks about fighting is a pure fool. This leaves the good enemy untouched, and instead attacks one of our own. I shouldn't have asked it for help in the first place. But it's too late to say anything now, because Lu Xiaoqi has already walked towards it with an unkind look on her face, staring at it with burning eyes. You can't beat a shaker, right? Now it's a fair match between 2 versus 2, right? Jiao. Lu Xiaoqi wanted to say something more, but a huge shadow directly covered his body, but the Hydra saw the bad opportunity and directly swung its tail and launched a sneak attack. At the same time, the 9 huge heads of the Hydra were not idle, twisting and launching breath attacks at Lu Xiaoqi, who was dodging away. The breath of this Hydra is highly poisonous. Even if it is touched by an ordinary sun, it will inevitably be melted on the spot. And its body is also surrounded by such aura. The truth is, if you get any closer, you will melt. That's what it means. Unfortunately, the same trick is ineffective against Lu. Because he had already used Prayer of Wuchen on himself, he was immune to the poison. Although the poison can be exempted, the breath cannot be eaten. For no other reason than to simply dislike Hydra, it has bad breath. So he activated the wind form, nimbly dodged the Hydra's attack and quickly approached the opponent. At the same time, a sharp sword appeared in his hand. This time I will chop off all 9 of your heads and see how you come back to life. Lu Xiaoqi's eyes flashed with cold light, and his sword intent was fierce. With the help of Zuyan, who had the best combat power among the 3 boss, the battle was quickly over. Hydra's huge body collapsed. Just as Lu Xiaoqi said, he found an opportunity and successfully chopped off the opponent's 9 snake heads, completely losing its ability to resurrect. Although even after it died, the huge residual vitality still allowed its body to struggle in place for a long time, unwilling to die, but in the end it was still unable to give birth to a new head and died completely. Of course, Lu Xiaoqi knew that due to the characteristics of infinity, this guy would most likely be reborn in this hell one day in the future. But within a short period of time, it no longer posed any danger to him. The fate of the big toad was even worse. It would definitely not be able to beat Zuyan. It was originally poisonous enough to make it frightened, but with the blessing of Lu Xiaoqi's buff, Zuyan was completely immune to its only effective damage skill. This resulted in it completely losing any room for resistance in front of the other party. And run. It could be seen during the previous chase that it obviously couldn't outrun Zuyan. So after killing the Hydra, Lu Xiaoqi turned around and admired the exaggerated and smooth set of exquisite small combos of Zuyan, who was known as the main killer. It was a perfect output of violent aesthetics. Just peel off the skin of the giant toad, tear it apart and make it a side dish for the frogfish. Of course, judging from the highly toxic nature of this thing, Lu Xiaoqi probably didn't have the luxury to enjoy this deadly delicacy. Why not give it to your friends in Fuzhou province next door? After all, what people focus on is shared with each other. Presumably, anyone who comes to this highly poisonous thing should be welcome. But this is something for later, let's leave it aside. Zuyan reiterated helplessly. After taking care of the two behemoths, the surroundings finally became quiet. Zuyan. At this moment, Zuyan looked at the toothpick-like gift in his hand with a confused expression, and then glanced sideways at Lu Xiaoqi, who looked expectant, as if he was hesitant to speak. A trace of hatred flashed in Bai Yuan's eyes. Of course I know how to get there. He held the silver needle-like stick in his hand and waved it twice. Isn't this too small? In order to express his gratitude, Lu Xiaoqi also generously gave a weapon that fit the image of a big monkey. Lu Xiaoqi nodded. He originally thought that Zuyan, the master of killing, would be a guy with an extremely explosive temper who would fight to the death if he disagreed with you. Zuyan serves as the leader, helping Lu Xiaoqi fight all the way to the final level of infernal affairs. Lu Xiaoqi said with a smile, not paying attention to Zuyan's helpless expression. My name is not Big Monkey, you can call me Zhangbai. It is said that you monkeys are all good at using sticks. Are you satisfied with my magic weapon? Bai Yuan replied in a sullen voice. As for the next level. Lu Xiaoqi patted her forehead. This thing can adjust its size according to the user's body shape. After all, it was a childhood dream. Seeing the messed up expression on its face, Lu Xiaoqi couldn't help but feel a little funny. But no matter what, one person and one monkey happily reached a consensus. I'm satisfied. Zuyan nodded, and then couldn't help complaining, don't you think this weapon doesn't match my body type? He was serious about letting the monkey play with the stick. Okay, Big Monkey. No problem, Big Monkey. I didn't expect that my temper would be so gentle and easy to talk to. The mantra is, as you wish, follow my will, transform quickly, transform quickly. How about it? Ahem, of course there is a possibility that a person's good temper will only be shown to people who are stronger than him. For example, people like Lu Xiaoqi are used to knocking people to the ground when they disagree with each other 99 and 81 times, and almost died. Oh! I forgot to tell you. Lu Xiaoqi raised her head and looked at the confused great white ape in front of her. Hey! Big Monkey, do you know how to get to the next level? Lu Xiaoqi said with excitement. It was a magical weapon that he forged from the furnace in the Pure Land of Paradise when he had nothing to do. Because of its special attributes and the duplication of his own Black Rose ability, he never used it, nor was he willing to part with it. Let Black Rose swallow it up. Well, Big Monkey, I will definitely pass the level. After saying that, it looked at Lu Xiaoqi. Are you sure you really want to go? Yes, do whatever you like. I even said that I knew how to get there until the last level. As I said, my name is Zhangbai. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 450. When the monkey head named Zhangbai lamely recited the spell set by Lu Xiaoqi, the silver needle in his hand rose when the wind caught the wind, and in an instant it turned into a huge magic weapon more than 40 meters long. It was exactly the same as Zuyan's height, and as its size grew, its weight also increased greatly. Zuyan no longer felt light when he carried it in his hand, and it was very handy. What a baby, Zuyan beamed with joy. Although it is a ferocious beast that specializes in killing and fighting, it is proficient in all cold weapons in the world. But it is very difficult to find a weapon that satisfies him and is easy to use. After all, almost no one would go out of their way to forge weapons for exotic beasts like it. He held the stick in his hand, danced a few times, and threw out several beautiful stick flowers, which received a burst of applause from Luzaoki. Then he stood up with the stick and asked in a muffled voice, "What's the name of this baby? Do you really want to give it to me?" "Certainly." Luzaoki nodded and said with a smile, "Well, just call him Ruyatai. The reason why it's not called Ruyi Golden Cudgel, is to pay tribute to the Monkey King, and secondly, this stick doesn't have a golden cudgel. Okay, don't talk anymore, let's just start blooming. No one would be more suitable for this big treasure than you." He wasn't telling lies. After all, the power of the stick depends entirely on the size of the user. The larger the user's size, the heavier the weight of the stick, and the damage will increase geometrically. So far, this big monkey is almost the largest that Luzaoki has ever seen, that's why Luzaoki said this. In addition, this stick has another feature, it never wears out. Of course, this characteristic is not absolute. To be precise, even if it is interrupted and damaged, as long as it is not completely reduced to debris, it can be restored to its original appearance by reciting the spell again. These two characteristics are useless to Luzaoki, and they are the kind that are tasteless and a pity to throw away. After all, he is a man with black rose. As long as he upgrades his own equipment infinitely, he has no need for this thing. Moreover, the black rose itself cannot be damaged, because it and Luzaoki are almost the same as one. Unless Luzaoki is completely dead, the black rose will never malfunction. At the same time, Luzaoki has not learned any skills that can change her body shape, and the degree of matching with the stick is 0. Moreover, Black Rose itself has the function of transformation and can change her body shape according to Luzaoki's needs. Form, or even make various weapons, as long as it has a template, that is, it has been swallowed by it. So instead of letting the stick gather dust in your package, why not give it to those in need? It can also give your new thug a little more combat power. Why not? Thank you. Zuyan's lips trembled, and finally he said these two words with complicated eyes. Although it doesn't know what Luzaoki's psychological activities are, it sincerely thanks Luzaoki. This was not only because Luzaoki gave it a handy weapon, but also because when he was sinking into the darkness of demonic pollution, it was the man in front of him who used a gorgeous infinite throw to wake him up. Completely saved his soul and will. Luzaoki couldn't stand its disgusting look, so she waved her hand uncomfortably. Okay, we have the weapons, let's get on the road. Zuyan nodded, used his sharp nails to break open the body of the hydra that was still twitching slightly, and actually pulled out a long sword from it. Don't tell me this thing is called Tiankongyun Ha. Luzaoki couldn't help but complained with a weird look on her face. Yamata no Orakai. This is such a dreamy connection. Many people have misunderstandings about Yamata no Orakai, thinking that it only has 8 heads. However, the word chi is the same as chi, which means fork. It's just some nonsense made by Xiaopuja, just take a look and don't fall for it. In other words, Beiki actually means that its neck has 8 forks, so it should have 9 heads. This may also be because people in a certain island country are not very literate in numbers. Well, I don't rule out the possibility that I miscounted because I was too panicked. So it makes sense that Yamata no Orakai is actually Hydra Soyanagi. Therefore, it is common sense to take out a handful of Tiankongyun from Hydra's body. Zuyan, on the other hand, glanced at Luzaoki inexplicably. In fact, it doesn't know what the name of this long sword is. In its hands, This sword is much taller than ordinary people, and it is no better than an exquisite fruit knife. But this thing is just a key, and it won't be used as a weapon, so it doesn't matter. Lu Xiaoqi thought it was Tian Kanjiun's big sword stuck in the ground, and a gray beam of light suddenly fell from the sky. The big monkey pointed at the light beam and said naively, "Let's go." As he spoke, he took the lead and entered the light pillar. The moment it came into contact with the light pillar, it was instantly sucked in. Lu Xiaoqi understood that this was the passage to the next level. But he still glanced at the big sword that was left there a little reluctantly. It seems that there is no chance to find out whether it is Tian Kanjiun. Lu Xiaoqi could only shake her head and sigh, choosing to give up, and then strode into the pillar of light. The moment he came into contact with the light beam, he felt a strong suction pulling his body. Lu Xiaoqi did not use any strength to resist this force, and was pulled into another space almost instantly. But after he left, two sneaky figures suddenly appeared. This guy's power is really. One of the figures held it in for a long time before he thought of a suitable word. It's quite unique. The other one ignored the figure's words and just silently stretched out a devil's hand, holding it on the sword that seemed to be Tian Kanjiun, and gently pulled it out from the ground. Then it grinned triumphantly and said, "Very good, we are one step closer to destroying this place and escaping completely." As he said that, the two figures looked at each other and laughed wantonly. That twisted figure, illuminated by the bright moon hanging high in the sky, showed the appearance of a devil.